Welcome to this episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. I'm Taylor Burton Edwards, Liturgy Man with Discipleship Ministries of the United Methodist Church. I am your apportionment dollars at work to help you strengthen worship and the understanding of worship where you are. Today's question comes to us from the Reverend Carol Cannon of St. Andrew's United Methodist Church in Bamberg, South Carolina. And she wonders about the theological warrant for intinction as a primary practice for receiving Holy Communion in the United Methodist Church. What's the theology that informs that practice? It's a great question. And what's really good about it is it gives us a good example to talk about, among others that we'll discuss in this episode, of what I might call middle practices. That is, practices in which we're trying to align our theology, in this case of Holy Communion, with our practice of it, what we say with what we do, in the face of a constraint that we perceive that makes us reluctant to maybe align them as fully as they could be with a different kind of practice. So it represents a kind of compromise in the face of a perceived constraint, a middle practice. What is the full practice of receiving? It would be based upon what Jesus actually did and said. He gave his disciples the cup after they had dined together, and he said, "Drink from this, all of you." So the full practice is, to be aligned with the words of Jesus, is to drink from a common cup. And that common cup represents the fullness of our unity with Christ and our unity with each other, not only in the congregation, but with all Christians in all times and places. So there's a lot of significance in a single cup. Now, here's the constraint, and it's why we don't drink from the common cup in many of our churches. Germ theory. We're afraid of contagion. We're afraid that if we drink after each other, we might get sick. And so we are reluctant to carry on the practice of drinking from the common cup. But we still want to put forth that common cup as a vibrant and vital sign to enable us to experience what Jesus was talking about without drinking after one another. Intinction is a middle practice that allows us still to share a common cup and even a common loaf. But then by dipping the bread into the juice rather than drinking from it, perhaps we are reducing our opportunity to share germs with one another in addition to sharing in the body and blood of Christ. That's what's going on there. Now, I would argue and point out that the practice of using little cups, in fact, is also a middle practice. That one retains the action of drinking, which is what Jesus said, "Drink from this, all of you," but loses the symbol of the common cup from which we all drink, because everyone gets their own cup. This is why what this holy mystery commends is an example of two other middle practices that try to bring all of this together in a certain way. One of them is, as we mentioned, either drinking from the cup, the full practice. The middle practice, though, intinction, or this holy mystery goes on to say, you could use a pouring chalice. And for those who don't want to receive by intinction or drinking from the common cup, a single chalice, a pouring chalice, could also be on the table, and the juice or the wine could be poured from that into little cups as people are being served, so that everyone, though they're receiving in a little cup, is receiving actually from the very same single chalice, pouring chalice, that is blessed on the communion table at the same time. That's probably the closest we can get to a middle practice that more closely embodies the full practice of actually drinking from the common cup, but it's one that not many of our churches are doing at this time. So, middle practices. It's an attempt to try to capture everything that the full practice used to do, but in the face of a constraint, in this case, that constraint being about germs, we try to find a modification that doesn't lose the entire symbol, but may have a kind of compromise on part of it. I hope this has been helpful. Remember, you can always contact me, worship@liturgyfolks.com, through the UMC Worship Facebook group, or drop a line on this page like Carol Cannon did. And perhaps your question or comment will become the basis for a future episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. May the peace of Christ be always with you.